Actually, over the last 10 years, governance has improved on average across Africa. Today, we have probably 70% of the population living in under much improved governance in their country. So that's useful, but it still is lacking behind expectation and population growth. And so we're happy with the growth and improved governance, but we think things should happen a little bit faster. One area of concern actually is education. We see a slight deterioration on the quality of education and whether the education actually meets the market needs, because at the end, really education is for jobs. And there is a growing concern among the African population about whether the standard of education really meets their expectations. So there is some dissatisfaction and disappointment with the delivery in that area. Sustainable economic opportunity remains as the slowest, or displays the slowest improvement among the four categories of the index. Over 10 years, it barely moved actually, which is rather disappointing because over 10 years, the African economy grew by 40%, while sustainable economic opportunity barely moved, some like 0.2% or something like that. And that's a missed opportunity. We did not manage to translate the economic growth really into a better economic opportunity for our people. We also notice there is no correlation really between the size of economy and sustainable economic opportunity. If you look at this graph, which shows the largest 10 economies in Africa, we see that the ranking really moves between second place to 47th place. There is no correlation between sustainable economic opportunity and the size of the economy. And if we look at the bottom 10 economies in Africa, again, we see there is no correlation. So that's an interesting something to think about. Is not really the size of the economy, which determines the sustainable economic opportunity development in that country. We also need to remember that we are really talking about averages. Averages masks divergence between countries. So while the average sometimes appears to be moving slowly, it doesn't mean all of Africa is moving slowly. Some economies in Africa and some performance is improving quite rapidly, while some others are deteriorating, and that produces that sort of slightly gently moving upwards performance. And what we notice is that the divergence between the good performance and the bad performance is increasing over the years. It means really we're getting more countries doing well and more countries doing badly. We need to emphasize that the slow growth and governance is an average, and that masks some real improvement in some countries which done very well. I'd like to mention Kenya, Morocco, Cote d'Ivoire. Kenya and Morocco really moved between 8 and 10 places in the governance overall ranking. But Cote d'Ivoire moved up 19 places, great improvement over the last 10 years. So there is this pictures which we have to understand that when we speak about averages, it masks somehow the good performance and the bad performance. And so we really need to understand that Each country has its own story. Probably the most important point this index makes is that the amazing, strong correlation between rule of law and governance. The correlation is so strong as 0.92. 0.92. It is a very strong correlation between governance and rule of law. And that is something important for people to realize and appreciate. We need rule of law in Africa. It's very important. And that will be the real driver for good governance. We also note the strong correlation between transparency and the sustainable economic development. The strong correlation, again, is shown here. And it's interesting. You have transparency, you have rule of law, you have good development, and you have good governance. We have an explosive growth in youth in Africa. There is a tsunami of young people coming in Africa, and I'm afraid we're not dealing with this issue seriously. Our growth is too little, too small, too late, and we try to run to stay where we are. It's like running on a treadmill. I mean, we're not moving forward because the growth in population is outstripping the growth in our economies and the growth or the development in our governance. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. Where are we going to get jobs for all those young people? And I'm surprised that nobody talking about family planning in Africa. Why is that? It is a taboo. We cannot manage this bulge in population, and we need to find a way to create jobs, create investment, and we show the relationship between rule of law and governance and rule of law and development. And it's important to really act on this. In the next 10 years, the working age Africans, the Africans in the working age will increase by 30%. Will our job market increase by 30% over these years just to stay where you are? Forget about development. That's a real challenge for us. We need to pay attention to our youth and what are we doing for them.